Call to order the meeting of the Mayor and Council of the Borough of River Edge, March 18th, 2024, special meeting, 6 p.m. I ask for a moment of silent reflection for all those towns that are in councils and all those professionals that are working with councils to create a budget that is fair and reasonable. And then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Statement of compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act. This meeting complies with the Open Public Meeting Act by notification via March 1st, 2024. Sunshine notice containing the time, date, and access information in town to the town record. And sorry, my screen just got a pop-up. Town news and the record, and by posting of the same with the municipal bulletin board and the borough website, and following notice of the same with the municipal clerk. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Kaufman.
Here.
Council President Montesano Cohen.
Here.
Councilwoman Kinsella.
Here.
Councilwoman Malalari.
Here.
Councilman Benson.
Here.
Councilman Glass. Mayor Papaleo.
Here. Very good. And did we, I was distracted for a moment. Did we call Councilwoman Kinsella? We did, didn't we? Okay, so the full council is present, plus our professionals, especially our clerk, our business administrator, and a CFO. Okay, well, here we go. So our agenda is the only item on our agenda is the budget. And my agenda was up a moment ago, but then my alternate computer died. So just give me a moment while I make sure that I fulfilled all the obligations of opening the meeting. I believe I have. Okay, public comments. So could I have a motion and second to open to the public for any comments or suggestions or questions they might have?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Excellent. Okay, are there any members of the public who would like to raise their hand in the queue, and we would give you an opportunity to speak if you so wished? I see two attendees, Greg or Neil. Greg or Neil, I'm going to give you about 20 more seconds. If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to assume that you're good and that we can proceed. Okay, can I have a motion and second to close to the public?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? Hearing none, that is complete. Okay, so we begin the 2024 operation budget discussion. Ms. Apatella, I will hand the, where will we begin?
The best part to begin is with our CFO to give a summary of where we stand in the budget. We have, from when you received your budget books, we did receive a couple of updated figures. So I yield the floor to Mr. Battaglia.
Chris, you are recognized.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we are beginning another budget cycle here. There's no question, and this is going to be a general statement. A lot of the statements that I make tonight are going to be general across municipalities. It's not specific to River Edge, but there's certainly been a lot of headwind in municipal budgets this year. We're finding that a lot of budgets are just higher than expected as far as tax increases are concerned. There were a lot of municipalities that had budget cap issues, which actually caused the local finance board to adopt another set of regulations that allow for cap exceptions this year, similar to what they had to do last year. So there is no question that every municipality is facing budget headwinds. As of right now, the version of our budget that everybody has in front of us represents an increase of 5.155%. That number, like Lizette just mentioned, actually went down very slightly just in the last week or two when we got updated state aid figures from the state. It's not really a material change. We got an extra about $9,000 or so. So we're at about 5.1 even on the tax impact as of today. That is about $228 on the average household, which is valued at $397,165. Just for reference, as we're going through this, the value of one tax point is $149,645.61, and a tax point represents $39.72 on the average resident. To make that a little bit easier, we use $100,000 flat. So every change in this budget on the appropriation or revenue side of $100,000 will change the average resident's tax bill by $26.54. So that's a good way, as we're going through it, to see what the impact is of every change that we make while we go throughout this process.
Chris, could you go back and just for the public's benefit, you said to use a benchmark of $100,000, which would have an impact of, can you give us that number again?
$26.54.
All right. Keep going. Thank you.
So, as with every year, I usually start with the major drivers. The 5.1% increase is a result of about $787,000 of additional amounts to be raised through taxation. When I say amounts to be raised by taxation, what that means is you take your total budget amount, which in this case is $20,500,000 about, and you subtract all of your revenue that you can generate without taxing. For us, that's about $4,280,000. And the difference between those two numbers is your amount to be raised by taxation. That amount right now is $16,236,289. So that's $787,000 more than last year. We have about, let's see, the count here is we have 19 items. When you add those 19 items alone together, you see an increase of $810,000. So it's very easy to find the major drivers of this budget. I can go down those major drivers if you'd like, or we can go through the departments and we can kind of flag them as we go.
No, I would for the public's benefit, for the council's benefit, for those department heads who are here, I'd like for you to go through the major drivers, at least the top 5 or 10.
Okay, sure. Well, so number one, and this is not on your list. I've got the appropriations on your list in front of you, but I also want to make a point of there's one large revenue item which we had discussed every year for the last 2 or 3 years as we were anticipating the ARPA funds. Right, this is the last year that we can anticipate the ARPA funds. We anticipated $500,000 in 2022, $400,000 in 2023, and we knew that this would be the last year. We're anticipating the balance, which is $296,884.92. So that's $103,000 less in revenue on just that one item. And
Chris, for the benefit of the public, let's not use acronyms, or if we do use acronyms, let's explain them.
Sure. The ARPA funds were the American Rescue Plan Act funds that came down from the federal government through the state and then down to the municipalities. It was awarded in 2 tranches 3 years ago, and River Edge opted to slowly utilize those funds rather than doing it all at once, which allowed us to wean ourselves off of them, right? So as you can see, we went from 500 to 400 to about 300. Now, keep in mind, next year we will be at 0 for this. So we know that next year we will not have that $300,000 in revenue, but this year we have $100,000 less. Now moving on to the appropriations, the 19 line items that I was talking about before. What I used as a flag here for your benefit is anything that was plus or minus $20,000. So that was the baseline that I used. And going down from top to bottom, just in order of the budget document, is we had finance. We had a new full-time hire. In the past, we've always had part-time employees. We made the decision last year to hire full-time. That position is also a floater. Yes.
So sorry. So I think you're going, if I understood you correctly, you're going down the list that we have. I would
Yes.
prefer you not do that. I'd prefer you go from the greatest driver to the least driver. And so it looks like the number one driver would be police salary and wages. Would that be correct, at a tax impact of 36.65 and a change of of 138,660?
That would be correct.
So
Yes.
that's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to go from the greatest impact to the least impact.
Okay. So the greatest impact would be police salaries and wages. That's contractual. So there's not a whole lot of conversation there. That's followed by employee group health, also something that is outside of our hands. That's $122,000 increase. Social Security is next at $59,000. That is just a product of, and when I say Social Security, that's all payroll taxes. So that's just a product of higher salary and wages, higher Social Security number. That's followed by the sanitation landfill line item. That's a $58,500 increase. We have a new line item in the budget this year.
So I want to stop you there. Yeah, I know I keep stopping you, but it's really important that we educate the public, educate ourselves, and we educate all those present. The landfill, I know what it means, but can you explain to the public what that means? Because they'll understand Social Security, they'll understand group health, they'll understand police department, salary and wages, but the landfill, the public may not understand.
That is the Bergen County Utilities Authority, this is the BCUA fees for taking away our garbage. And we have a new contract that's going out to bid this year. I don't recall exactly what month it starts, but it will be at $450,000, and that's the number that we have in there compared to the $391,500 that we had last year.
Okay, good. Keep going. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
We have a new line item this year. There's an acronym. I don't remember what it is, but there are new reporting requirements related to stormwater management. That is a new line item in this year's budget. That is for $52,500, and that is to handle all of the requirements that are now newly required of municipalities related to stormwater reporting. And like I said, I believe there's a couple of acronyms with the reporting requirements. I don't know what they are offhand. I'm sure Jason can give us a long education on all of them.
We don't need that, but this is one of many non-funded obligations that we have.
Yeah, so the state awarded a $25,000 grant to every municipality, $50,000 to some of the larger ones. We did receive the $25,000 grant, and that was to fund hundreds of $1,000s worth of requirements. So yes, that is a very partially funded mandate.
I think that's important when those non-funded mandates come up, that you mention them so the public understands that this is not optional. This comes from the state or federal government, depending on where the mandate comes from, or the county, but it's really mostly the state. And that we have to add this to our budget. And if there's any grants, as you so correctly said, what what, if anything, was given to us by the state to soften the blow, and what was the larger obligation. So that's great. Please keep going.
The next line item that we have is liability insurance, and that is one of the line items that the local finance board addressed in their cap exception allowances, because the increases in liability insurance year over year have been astronomical. Ours is it's about $46,000 of an increase year over year.
Keep going. Good job.
The next line item that we have is our salary adjustment account. That account we've put together every year. That in this year, it reflects 3% increases for non-union employees. There was already a resolution authorizing 2% increases per our salary ordinance, so the delta would be 1%. That's still in this salary adjustment account. Should the governing body approve it, we would keep it in. If they do not, we would remove it.
Okay.
The
So, just for the public's sake, we must budget for all possibilities. So we may not spend that money, but we have to put it aside, or we can't spend that money. And if we came to a resolution that was more than we had budgeted, then it can't happen, at least not until late December when we can make transfers, correct?
yeah, November, but yes. Yes.
Okay, keep going.
We have the Recreation Commission salary and wages increased by $40,000. We do have an additional employee there. The Shade Tree Commission request came in at an additional $40,000. We combined all of our DPW salary and wage accounts. This was to make this more transparent. With the exception of recycling, they're all one line item now, so no more buildings and grounds, repairs and maintenance, vehicle maintenance, maintenance of parks. It's all just one DPW salary and wage account. The total increase in that account is only $36,800. Then we move into our BCUA accounts, which is that Bergen County Utility Authority. We have O&M, an operations and maintenance budget, and a debt service budget with them. The debt service is $33,000, and the O&M is $27,000. Combined, we've got a $60,000 increase on our BCUA bill.
So let's stop there and let's unpack that a little bit, if you would, Chris, so that the public understands as well as the council.
That is again another line item that is, they handle all of our wastewater, and they do. I don't remember the exact number of municipalities that they have, but it's basically a consortium, and we get charged our proportion of the flow that goes to the BCUA. So at the beginning of the year, we get a summary of our flow relative to the total flow. They take the total cost and they divide it between all of the users, and we get a number. That number is broken down between our operation and maintenance and our debt service, and that number for this year is $1,321,170.07. So again,
let me stop you there. So basically what we're talking about is every time somebody flushes a toilet, this is the bill that we're paying because of it. And that's what we mean by wastewater.
Yes.
Okay, and that currently is 1 million, what was it again?
$1,321,170.07 is the exact amount of the invoice. The amount of the budget appropriation between the two is $1,322,000. So it's just rounded up to the nearest thousand.
Okay. Now, for the public's benefit, this it's gone up 60,000 this year. So it was approximately 1,260,000 last year, ballpark.
Yeah, 1,262,000. Yes.
Okay. So this part of the budget is wastewater, and wastewater, by that we mean anytime we flush the toilet. This is what we have to include in the budget.
Correct.
Keep going.
And as a disclaimer on that, that is the majority of what we pay in wastewater. We also have a bill from Hackensack Paramus for sewer charges that we have not received yet. We don't know what that number is. So we do have a placeholder in there. It's not, the placeholder that we have is not over 20,000, so it's not on this list, but it is something that over the next month, while we are between introduction and adoption, we may get the final bill and we may be able to adjust the budget to reflect it. But we do also have a separate bill for a separate portion of town that does not go to the BCUA, and that amount is about $277,000 in this year's budget. So our total wastewater is just about 1.6 million.
Okay, so let me stop there just so for the public's benefit. So the Hackensack is essentially that portion of River Edge, which is on the other side of Route 4, correct?
I don't quote me on where the location is. I'm not completely sure.
So there's portions of our sewage system that it was more efficient to connect to Hackensack or Paramus. And that's why those portions come out separate.
Correct.
Good, keep going.
Okay, we're moving on to legal services. Is a $25,000 increase. Recycling is a $23,000 increase. Where I started before, finance, salary, and wages.
So I want you to go back to recycling first.
Okay.
So recycling, for the public's benefit, has been gone from a revenue maker to from in other words, a positive to a negative. And that's mainly because if I have this correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, the idea of plastic and metal, aluminum essentially, was used to be a moneymaker for these companies, and now it's not. But I believe paper is still a bit of a moneymaker. So we lose on one side and we gain on the other. Is that correct, or did I get that reversed?
Yeah, we're not gaining much on anything anymore. They're all the rates have gone down. It's more expensive for the haulers to take it away. And the other piece of that is also vegetation, which is recycled. And that's actually the largest part of the increase in this particular account. Is the amount of vegetation that's being hauled away has been substantially higher year over year for the last couple of years. And that's so you have tipping fees and tonnage fees. So that's just the amount that they charge per ton of we'll call it waste, but it's recycling that they take away.
Good. Now, before we leave this topic, Chris, and Lizette, feel free to chime in on this. We also have I'm blanking, hold on. The question might come from the public, why don't we just put all this with our garbage? But the tipping fee for garbage is much higher, if I'm not mistaken, than it is for the recycling, which would be our waste plant material, which is the leaves and things like that, the plastic and aluminum, and the paper, which we call cardboard. Is that essentially correct?
Yes, and by statute, we are required to recycle, to collect recyclable goods.
Excellent. And this is another unfunded mandate. So we are obligated to get rid of them, but getting rid of them or removing them from the borough via recycling is a better rate than garbage, correct? Is that, Chris?
Correct.
So the public might be wondering, well, why don't we just, put everything in the garbage, just because it would cost us vastly more. So we don't want people to stop recycling their plastic or their aluminum or their cardboard, because you're saving money by doing that. Because if we had to put it into the regular garbage, our rates would be going even higher than they currently are. Chris, great job. Keep going.
Okay, the next account was finance S&W, $21,800 increase. That's just staffing. We have the library has a salary and wage increase of about $21,000, $20,213.92. And then workers' compensation, which is just another part of that liability insurance bill. You'd separate it into liability and workers' compensation. That's got an increase of $14,640. I usually lump it together with the liability insurance. So when you look at the two of them combined, that bill increased by $60,639. And then the only other item there that we did not mention is actually a reduction, and that is a reduction in the construction official account, operating account of $37,500.
Okay, all right. And so the % of total increase is 101.78. Can you explain that for the benefit of all? At the bottom-
So that just represents since the total amount to be raised by taxes is $787,000 higher than it was last year. We just read off a list, and again, that list doesn't even include the $103,000 in revenue. We just read off a list of 19,000 of 19 items that are a total of $810,000. So those 19 items alone represent 102.87% of the total increase on the amount to be raised by taxes here. So it's just a testament to how much those few items impact this budget.
Good. So this is essentially all of the drivers for the tax increase, and why we have that.
And the fact that you have many other accounts that in aggregate are negative, right? Because we have $810,000 on just those 19 accounts. That means the aggregate of all of the other accounts is actually a negative $20,000. So we have pluses and minuses, but these are the real major drivers, and we were able to make some changes to some other accounts to be able to accommodate the increases in these accounts.
Okay, good. All right, Chris, keep going.
Well, that's the end of the summary. I don't know if we want to look at department by department, or if we want to go into some more general budget information. So I'm open to how we want to guide this conversation. I know we have a capital discussion as well. I know that we usually wait for maybe the Saturday morning meetings for those, but there's plenty to go over.
We're going to wait on the capital. Now, for the public's benefit, as well as a reminder for the council, 5% of the capital is required to be included in the operational budget. Would you talk to that so we could educate the public on how that works and why that's important?
Yeah, so the requirement for authorizing debt is that you need to put a down payment on that debt. The down payment requirement is 5% unless it is funded by a state grant or another location, such as maybe open space or a trust fund that you have. So what that means is for every $50,000 that you put in your capital improvement fund, which is the location of that 5% down payment, you can authorize debt up to $1 million. So in last year's budget, we had $150,000, which allowed us to authorize up to $3 million in new authorizations. This year, the number is a little bit more complicated, but I will try to make it more transparent. We have the same $150,000 as last year in the capital improvement fund, but we also have the difference between the drop in debt service, and that is a placeholder for future debt increases. And what I mean by that is we have some old serial bonds that fully matured, so we no longer have to make debt payments on them. Think about it as you've made your final mortgage payment last year, and now you don't have to make a mortgage payment on that this year. But we don't want to see, in this case, it's a $300,000 principal reduction in debt and a $18,000 reduction in interest in in this year's budget, but we don't want that to fall off of our out of the budget document because we are going to have to replace that with new debt. We just haven't issued that new debt yet. So I have it in there in capital improvement fund as a placeholder. We'll be able to use that money to offset the cost of future debt, but we will have new debt service in the next year or two that will fully replace the amount that we are that fully matured last year. So as far as what my expectation for that down payment is, I still expect that it's that $150,000. But we have some wiggle room because we have that placeholder in there.
Good. So would it be fair to describe this as, Chris, if you were a homeowner and you just paid off a new refrigerator and a new kitchen and everything else, and so that loan is done, and it was always part of your budget for the last, say, 10 years, but you know that the boiler's going in, the air conditioning unit's going, and that you're going to have to replace it later in the year. So instead of removing that from your own personal finance budget, you leave that payment in so that you're not suddenly hit with a lot of money that you can't pay.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Okay, good. Keep going with general information.
So that's the capital improvement fund, and that's where the down payment comes from for the capital projects. The other item that we always have a long conversation about is the use of surplus. It shows up on your budget document as surplus anticipated. You'll always hear me calling it fund balance. It is intended to balance our funds. We have been maintaining a healthy fund balance year over year. This year, one of the things that we're doing to help offset the tax increase is we are using more of our fund balance. Last year, we used $1,552,500. This year, we are using $1,800,000. So that's an increase of $247,500 in fund balance that we're utilizing to help offset some of the increases that we have in the rest of the budget. Now, to hopefully give you some comfort, we're doing that with the anticipation that we're going to be able to continue to replenish the amount that we're using, right? One of the things that we want to make sure that we do is not use more fund balance than what we think we can replenish in the following year. And I don't think that we're doing that. One thing that I will note, and I know that the question is going to be asked, well, what was our fund balance before and what is it now? That is there's a more explanation that has to go into it rather than just looking at the balance sheet. The balance as of January 1st of 2023 was $7.1 million. The balance at December 31st of 2023 is $5.8 million. And it sounds like we lost $1.3 million in surplus, but that's not really the full story. The full story is that we've been utilizing the fund balance that we have to avoid having to issue short-term debt for some of the capital projects that we've had. So on the balance sheet, what it looks like is a loan to ourselves. It's what's called an interfund if you're looking at the balance sheet. And we sent $3.5 million over to the general capital fund to fund our projects rather than issuing notes and having to pay interest on the debt associated with selling notes for these projects. So while it looks like we had a reduction of $1.3 million, we actually had an increase of $2 million because I do have a $3.5 million loan out there that as soon as we do issue the debt, which again, full disclosure, we do have to issue the debt this year. This is the last year where we can get away with funding it with cash. But once we do issue that debt, that loan goes away and the fund balance is restored. So it's a simple balance sheet. It's some balance sheet movement, but rest assured, our fund balance is still very healthy. And I do have full confidence that we'll replenish the amount that we're utilizing this year.
Wonderful. And for the public's benefit, New Jersey has some of the most conservative accounting policies of the 50 states. Is that correct?
My understanding is it's the most conservative, yes.
And second, River Edge has the council has imposed some stronger conservative that we sometimes have to by ordinance or by resolution suspend to some degree, but we've gone a little bit farther than the most conservative state need. Is that correct?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, great. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we maintain. What do we have, a AA+ rating as of right now?
We haven't had a rating in a couple of years. Let me take a look at what that new number is. I'll look that up right now.
Okay.
Just
But for
give
the
me a
public's
minute.
benefit, this allows us to borrow at a better rate than other municipalities in the state, and definitely better than other municipalities throughout the union, throughout the other 49 states. So it's a very responsible policy design.
Yes, we had a bond sale in 2020, and we were AA+. Yes.
Okay, keep going, Chris.
So speaking of that, of the fund balance, I think that we'll be able to replenish and be right back where we are. So I don't think it should be alarming that we're utilizing more than we did previously. And then the other big ticket item is debt service. Debt service, you know, I talked about it a little bit, where we have that placeholder of the $365,000. I'm sorry, $318,000. But it's something that over the next couple of years, depending on how rates change, we will have large debt service payments, and we'll be looking at short-term financing for the first couple of years. We'll look at long-term financing after that, and we'll be looking to fill in the gaps the same way. You know, we had a serial bond mature last year. We'll have serial bonds mature in the next couple of years, further reducing the amount of debt that we have to pay in the budget. And we will wait until it is advantageous for us to sell serial bonds and fill in those placeholders that we've been holding here. So that is something that we'll continue to discuss. We'll probably discuss it more during capital when we're talking about the impact of certain projects. But that's something to always keep on in the forefront of your head, because when you authorize a project, so let's use $1 million. If you authorize $1 million project, in year one, you have to put that 5% down payment in the budget, right? So we've got a $50,000 appropriation for down payment. We authorized debt on $950,000. Now, what I've been able to do in the last couple of years is I've been able to utilize some of the fund balance to fund those projects. So after year one, you aren't even seeing the impact of the debt in your budget, because we've been able to absorb it, and I've been able to move things around. But maybe 3 years later, maybe 4 years later, all of a sudden you'll start to have to pay principal and interest on some of these projects. And that's when you see it. So you can make a decision 3 years ago that you don't actually see the budget impact for 3 years, 4 years. It could be longer in some cases.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind, that you will eventually have to pay back some of the debt. Now, I'm always I'm looking as many years out as I can. So I'm always trying to plan to try to keep things as steady as possible, so that we don't have any lumpy increases. You know, I don't want to see a 2% increase in debt, and then a 2% increase in debt, and then a 25% increase in debt. I'm trying to keep everything steady, and that's the way that we're planning. But it is something to keep in mind, because in the next year or two, we might be talking about projects that we approved in 2021 that we have to start paying, making debt service payments on, that we might have forgotten about at this point, or it might have even been a completely different council approving those projects altogether.
And that's why we not only have you and Lizette, our business administrator, but we also have the finance committee constantly working throughout the year to anticipate not just what we're doing this year, but how it's going to impact in years to come. Keep going, Chris.
Yeah, and to that point as well, we do have a debt policy. And similar to the way that we have a fund balance policy that restricts us further than the restrictions that the state already imposes on us, we have a debt policy that restricts us further than what the state already restricts us to. So
And that's self-imposed.
it is self-imposed, and it is something that also keeps us making good decisions. So it's a great thing to have. And when we were talking about those rating agencies, that's something they look for. They like to see policies that survive changeover in governing bodies year over year. And that's something that River Edge has had for many years. So that's a testament to our governing body and the consistency that we've had long before I even got on board here.
Excellent. Chris,
Um,
I want you to keep going with general principles so that everyone present, as well as those who will be watching this later. But I'd like for you to, in a few moments, or weave into your presentation, where a 5.1, which is very jarring to me, but where a 5.1% increase is in relationship or in contrast to other municipalities throughout the state.
Well, so the budget process, we've been starting to look at introductions. We're right around the time the state deadline for introduction is April. So we've got a lot of municipalities that are starting to come up with those versions of their budgets that they're looking to introduce, and 5% has been the lowest I've seen so far. I haven't seen anything lower than that. I was just in a budget meeting this morning where we were able to drop it from, we started at 11 or 12. We were able to get it down as low as 8 to 9. But getting below that is difficult.
I want to stop you there, and I want, for emphasis, a good teacher emphasizes, great. How many municipalities do you service or are you aware of, would you say?
I work with about a dozen.
Okay, so out of 12 municipalities, and what you might also hear through your professional associations, the 5% that we're starting, that we're hopefully going to reduce a little bit, we'd like to reduce a little bit, is the lowest that you know of at this point anywhere in the state.
I haven't had one that started lower than that. No.
Okay, good. Thanks, Chris. Keep going.
So yeah, I mean, to that point, you're in a good place relatively, even though it's maybe not the place that we want to be in. Yeah. And the other piece of that is cap problems, right? So a lot of municipalities are having cap problems. What that means is there are 2 caps that the state imposes on our budgets. One is what's called a levy cap. So when we talk about that amount to be raised by taxation, they don't want to see the total tax levy inside caps, and I'll explain that in a second. They don't want to see that going over 2%. And they also have an appropriation cap where they don't want to see your spending go over a maximum of 3.5% as long as we adopt the COLA ordinance that we do look to adopt every year. And because of the increases that are really outside of our control for the most part, a lot of municipalities are having those cap problems. And that was one of the things that I spoke about earlier, where the local finance board added exceptions that maybe historically weren't always included as an exception to those caps, to allow people to actually, and when I say people, to allow the municipalities to introduce budgets. Otherwise, we would be out of compliance. So, we do have some opportunity to reduce our budget in areas that would help our cap. We certainly shouldn't have an issue being in compliance with the cap once we get to the point where we're introducing the budget, which is also great news for us. Because there are municipalities that are going through these conversations, and you don't have a choice but to cut if you want to introduce your budget. So we are faring a little bit better in that sense.
And that's because of our long-term conservative policies.
Yeah, we've been making decisions over the last couple of years that have allowed us to, whether it's bank cap or increase the basis of where our cap is calculated from, that allowed us to stay in compliance with that cap. So that is the other big piece that's affecting local government right now is just the inability to actually be able to introduce a compliant budget. So regardless of what the tax impact is.
All right, any other general announcements before we start looking through the book?
I think that's everything on my end.
All right, so Councilwoman Kaufman, who is the finance chair, and Ms. Apatella, who is our business administrator, where should we begin? We're not going to do capital. So should we begin at salary and wages, or should we begin at administration? Or do you think, would you recommend we begin somewhere else?
I think we should start at revenue.
Revenue,
Yes.
okay? Everyone, and so both the council and the citizen council, so our budget committee, let's turn to the third tab, which is the revenue. And Chris or Lizette, is there any way we can put these sheets up on the screen?
I might have different sheets. I can share.
This is the 2024 General Cap Ordinance Summary, correct, Liz, Michelle?
Yes, and I was going to go to the interest cash management fund section, which is 401-08-113-030.
So I can share a document. Are we looking at that 5-year history document, the worksheet?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So I can share my version of the document. It's just not in the same order. So I'll just need to navigate as we go through the book. I don't have a copy of that physical book. I have everything in PDF. So as
Yes.
long as
That's
you
fine.
let me know where we're going, I will get there.
Good. Go ahead, Michelle.
So 401-08-113-030. Is that helpful to you, the number?
Yes, I'm just gonna share my screen here.
Michelle, this is under the revenue tab, correct?
Yes, it's if you guys are there, it is the 5th page. It is the 5th page. I know the page numbers got chopped out by the hole puncher, but okay.
So ignore my page numbers. It's page 99 on my screen.
So there was I think it's the one after where it's interest on cash management fund 030.
Here it is here.
There it, yes, okay, so in speaking with Chris this morning, I think we do have a little bit of room to increase that. You can see that we made a lot more money last year than we had budgeted for, and so far this year we've had 60,000 of interest earned. So I would recommend that we maybe take that out up to 100 or 110,000. We're going to have less cash to earn interest shortly because we'll be selling notes in the summer probably or spring. But given, I think that we've already earned 60,000, I think we could take that up to 100 or 110, Chris.
Chris, what's your opinion?
Yeah, there's no issue with doing that. I will give you my rationale briefly on why I chose a low number, and every decision that I make is always going to be conservative.
Sure.
The total that we earned in interest last year was $324,000 across all of our accounts. Since we only anticipated 80,000, the extra 240 or so went into the fund balance, right? It helped to replenish the fund balance account. If we rewind back to 2022, we earned $88,000 in interest, right? So this is something that changes with rates.
Yeah.
Now, what I am always concerned about is, we received the 324,000. We can anticipate up to $324,000 in this budget, but if rates change or if our cash position falls because we spend more on projects and maybe we don't authorize debt on them, then we won't earn that interest. And then in the following year, if the rate environment is different, you'll be in a hole by the amount that you were anticipating. Now, the amount that Councilwoman Kaufman is recommending here is still not close to that 324, so it's still being conservative. But that's the reason why I kept the interest flat year over year, figuring that at some point it's going to come back down, and I don't want to be in a $200,000 hole in 1 year because we had a couple of great years of high interest rate environments.
Okay, so Michelle, would you again say what you're recommending that, so this is the first line, 4-01-08-113-030. You're recommending that we change the anticipated from 80,000 to what?
Either 100 or 110,000. We've earned 60 already. So,
Well, I'm wondering, Chris, could we go as far as 150, or is that just too crazy?
It's a game of chance, right? It's we certainly can. I don't have any doubt that we will collect $150,000 in interest this year. My expectation is that we'll probably be in the same ballpark as we were last year. I don't monitor the Fed meetings too closely, but you'll have a couple of rate hearings between now and the end of the year, and no one knows what's going to happen in those rate hearings or how quickly it's going to trickle down to the local banks. I'm sure when the rate goes up, it takes longer to trickle down, and when it goes down, it probably happens pretty quickly. But it's a question of, do you think that, or are you confident that we will be at least at 50% of our current Fed rate next year at this time, right? And that's what we're making our decision on. Alternatively, you can anticipate a little bit more in fund balance, knowing that it's a line item that you have to review each year. I mean, this is also a line item you have to review each year, but if you're not anticipating a lot of it, it's less important relative to maybe monitoring that fund balance number.
All right, Michelle, what about instead of 150, instead of 110, what about 125? Would you, as the finance chair, find that acceptable, or do you still feel that's too ambitious?
I think maybe 120.
And Lizette, what are your thoughts on this?
Because we're earning 3% right now at PNC, but we're going to be paying 4% at some point in the not super duper distant future on the notes that we sell. So
okay,
that's the offset.
Lizette, what do you think about 120?
Personally, I'm more comfortable at a flat 100. It's a volatile election year, and we don't know how the banks will respond and what rates are being cut, what rates will be increased.
Okay.
Speaking more from a political scientist perspective than a finance perspective.
All right. But we're talking about a 5.1 budget. I know that we're one of the lowest in the state, but I still would like to do something for the public. How about 110? How about we go with Michelle's 110? Council, please, and budget committee members, please feel free to unmute your mic if you are a budget committee member or a council person, and chime in on what you think about 100 or 110. I'm thinking 110 might be better, but anyone feel free to call out and I'll recognize you.
Mayor.
Go ahead, David. I see
I'm
you
sorry.
first.
Thank you. Yeah, real quick. I just want to confirm Michelle mentioned, so far, year to date, 60,000. I believe that's just through February though, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Raise your hand either physically or, Indira.
I was just gonna say that I agree with Michelle's original number of 110.
Okay. Any other member of council or, budget committee member, citizen budget committee member? Hearing none, Michelle, can you make a motion to change that from 80 to 110?
Yes, so I'm making a motion to change the cash management fund number 40108113030 from 80,000 to 110,000.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. This is only for the council because the council is the only one who can vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any member of council say nay or abstain? Hearing none, it's so moved. Michelle, where else?
I think the next thing I would recommend is going to the administration tab.
Okay, everybody,
Unless anyone has something they want to bring up in that section.
any member of council or citizen budget committee member, Councilman Benson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a quick question. I heard we're making 3% on our money. I'm making more than 5% on my money in my money markets. Is there a way to boost the interest rate we're making on that money?
Chris, if you could address that.
So back to that conservative state requirement issue. New Jersey, any banks that New Jersey puts their money in is required to have what's called governmental unit depository protection. And it's GUDPA is the acronym for that. For that reason, it costs banks a little bit more to hold our money, and they don't offer as high of interest rates. What we do have, and it's that the name of the account that we had on there was the Cash Management Fund. We do have a separate account with the New Jersey State Cash Management Fund. Because we are not allowed to invest our own money with very few exceptions. We can invest in government notes, but you have to have idle cash and you have to have it for long enough where you can afford to put it in maybe a CD for a year or 6 months. Through the Cash Management Fund, we can liquidate any time. And we do get higher interest rates. But as I mentioned before, we've been transferring a lot of our money over to the General Capital Fund to be able to support those projects, which is why, and one of the other reasons why my expectation for interest was a little bit lower this year, because simply we're going to have fewer dollars in that account. In short, I'm with you, because I use banks that don't have brick and mortar locations, and you get much higher rates with online banks. And I just for another Bergen County municipality, I went out for proposals for banking services, and the best return I got was actually 3% as well. So our bank is already competitive with a bank with a town that I had $40 million in cash to offer, and we were still only getting 3%. I know, long-winded answer, but it's just a conservative banking practice, and frankly, you don't want to give anybody the ability to be more risky with government money, right? So I'm going to 100% agree with New Jersey's policies on not allowing any of us to make decisions, because I'll tell you, I'm a certified financial officer, and there are no classes on investing money, right? So there's no expectation that any CFO in the state has an education on investing public funds appropriately.
Okay.
So it's a good thing that we're not allowed to.
All right. I appreciate the explanation.
Excellent. Anybody else? That was a good question. I'm sure it educated the public as well as the council and the budget committee, as well as the department heads. Anyone else for a question in the revenue tab? All right, we're going to skip capital. We're going to skip salary and wages. We're going to go to administration. Finance chair, Councilwoman Kaufman, where are we going on in that section?
So feel free to chime in, anyone who wants to. I was gonna move ahead to the Historic Commission. 40120175187.
Okay, for those of you who have books,
Oh,
Um,
yeah, it's,
so let me help you. It's in numerical order. So she says 40120-107. So you look at the 1, 2, 3, the fourth group. And you'd see that on the first page, fourth group says 100. And then on the second page, it says 100. And then third page, it says 100. And then you get into 155, I believe on the fifth page. And then you go a little bit further to, and you said 175, Michelle?
187. It's the second page from the back. Yeah, 175, 187.
Okay, so after the 155 group, then we go to the 165 group. And then we would go a couple of pages there. And then we go to the 175 group and so the 4, it means that we're in administration. 0120 is, I don't know what that means, but that's and then we get to the group, the fourth group, and it says 175-20 and 175-187. Michelle, which one are we referring to?
I mean, it's the same thing. They're asking for an increase, and I was going to recommend that we hold them flat. They didn't spend what they requested last year.
Okay.
So I would recommend.
Okay, is there anyone from the Historic Commission present? Barry?
Well, I'm the liaison to the Historic Commission, so I could speak to that. I was actually surprised that they asked for a raise. I think it should stay flat, in particular because we also found out that if we have any legal fees, that would, I think, would be covered sort of by the borough budget. So I agree. I think keeping it flat makes sense.
Excellent. Okay, so any member of council or the Citizen Budget Committee, Citizen Budget members, Ken or anybody else have a question or a comment? All right, Michelle, would you make that motion?
So I make a motion that we leave Historic Commission at $4,750 for 2024.
So we strike their requested increase.
Second.
It's been seconded. It's open for debate. Is there debate? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? All right, Michelle, where are we going now?
Okay, so Borough Clerk.
All right, but let's go to the next tab. So this is 101, 110, and 120. Borough Clerk is 120, so.
And I was just going to go to the very first page, and just for the public's benefit, 40120101028, professional services. If so, Lisette or Chris, could you just explain to the public what that number is for, so we know?
Can you repeat that line? 101?
It's the professional services. It's the second item on the first page.
It's 101-028.
28.
Our borough clerk can clarify, but this is for our IT services.
Okay.
So Ms. Dodd, if you could just speak to it a little bit.
That's correct. That's for our IT consultant. This is hit based on the contractual amount for their services.
Okay, so there's no increase there, correct?
Correct.
All right, Michelle.
Great. And then on the next page for everyone who's looking in the book, 40120101132. Oh, we just moved that over to a different section now. Is that correct? The reverse 911 non-emergency.
Okay, so everybody, so the 40120 are pretty much the same. So we're looking at the last two groups. We're looking at 101-130 and 101-132, correct, Michelle?
Yes.
And Michelle, your question was
Just wondering why that one is going down from 2,000 to 1,000.
Lisette and I looked at this. Nothing has been charged to that line for a number of
Ever.
years. I think.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Go,
Oh.
go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we decided to reduce that line, because we also have Nixle as the next line, which is what we use for our non-emergency notifications.
Well, if we've not used it for 4 years, why don't we bring it down to 500? Why leave it at 1,000?
We didn't want to reduce it too much or zero it out because as if you go a few lines down, the cable for Borough Hall, which is not for cable TV, but all the wiring for the computer networks and the internet, that is consistently going up. So so
You
in
want to
case
leave a
we
buffer somewhere else?
leave a buffer within the account because you could go over a line item. What matters is you don't go over the actual account, and in case you do, then that's when you have to wait until November for transfers.
Okay, so for the public's benefit, the rules surrounding transfers, as the BA just mentioned, says that we can't transfer unused funds from one account to another account, but within accounts, we can do it pretty much as needed. So leaving the $1,000 there respects the fact that we haven't used the reverse 911, but also leaves the option of just in case the cable Borough Hall goes unexpectedly up. Lizette, is that a fair summary?
Yes, and the reason why that line went up, even though the municipal building is not occupied, we did have to put wiring in for the office area that didn't have the wiring before, where staff is currently located. Our building department has been relocated also to 10 River Edge Road, and then on top of that, it's just the general increase to the rates.
Okay, Councilman Montano Cohen, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question on the line item about Nixle non-emergency. As I understand it, there are 3 types of Nixles, right? And we have, as of recent, authorized some departments to utilize Nixle for non-emergency Nixle. So my question is there another line item for the Nixles that are non-emergency, or is this 2,500 covering a flat fee for all 3 types of Nixles?
That's the flat fee for the subscription that we have.
Okay, so is there another line item where it is per, so is there a cost per Nixle? I guess my question is, are we covered enough 2,500 given that some of the different departments are utilizing Nixle for non-emergency information to the public?
No, I'm looking at our account. We have our subscription period runs from May 22nd to May 21st. So since May 22nd of last year, they counted as credits 214,000, and we have a balance of 285,000. So we have plenty, the account that we have has enough credits for our messaging, whether it's emergency, advisory, or community.
Okay,
good,
thank
Lisa?
you. Thank you, yes, thank you.
Any other member of council or Citizen Budget Committee? Indira.
Thanks, Mayor. I can't find my my electronic hand. On account 1110, it's in the same tab, 1110, 192.
So we were in 101, so you want to go to 110. Okay, so that's
Yes.
2 pages, and 110 and then 192, so I think 3 pages. And you are at G/honors and badges?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, should we increase that amount to 2,000 since we almost spent that last year?
Michelle or Lizette or Chris?
So this account, and as we're talking about it, this account fluctuates year over year. It's for honors that the town give to various people, things like that. So depending on what's on deck in any given year, it might be plus or minus. Looking at the screen, going back to 2019, we had about 750, 500, 612, 950. So last year was close to 2,000, but I don't know if like the bulk of that, there was a $1,400 expense for a crossing sign, a Pat Henry crossing sign, if that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that that's not an every year
No.
dedication, so it's probably okay where it is. It was just a one-off expense that brought that budget higher than typical.
Got it. Thanks, Chris.
Claudiana, Councilwoman Malari.
Yes, I have a question. If we can go back to the same page where the Nixle message was.
Okay, so just give us the
101-140.
101-140.
It says TV meetings. We didn't use anything on 2022, nothing on 23. Will it be appropriate to reduce that 3,000?
This line was, in the past, was charged for the equipment for the council chambers, for the cameras. And that's why we reduced it, since we were not in council chambers due to construction at Borough Hall. I'm not sure if when we return, if we'll have to have that equipment reinstalled, or if there's additional equipment, if we're going to stay in a hybrid format. So that's the reason why we left it at the 3,000.
Or if the equipment we have is outdated since technology changes annually.
So we'll probably need it later this
But
year.
an outstanding catch, a good catch. I'm glad to see that we're doing that. Anything else in administration?
The next thing I was just going to point out to everyone,
Sorry, Clerk, Borough Clerk.
4012012.
You don't have to read that one, Michelle. Just give us the last six numbers.
Okay, it's the second to last page in the section, and it's 120-022.
Okay, the last two grouping is 120 and
Postage.
002.
And I just wanted to point out to everyone, the Finance Committee already discussed this with Lisette and our borough administrator and the CFO. And we are just conservatively estimating that postage is going to keep going up. We spent about 9,000 last year. And it's actually, yeah, we're assuming it's going to stay flat because we're concerned that prices might go up in the future. So I just wanted to point that out.
I'm sorry, excellent, good point.
Yeah.
Is there anything else under Borough Clerk that any member of council or the Citizens Budget Committee would like an explanation for, or would like to make a recommendation for a reduction? All right, Councilwoman Kaufman, who is our finance chair, please continue.
Okay, so next up is Finance Department.
Okay, let's go there, everybody.
And just the first page, 40120130011. Just hoping either our BA or Chris could just explain for the public why we needed to add some staff in the finance area.
Well, this was actually not technically adding staff. It was the conversion from a part-time to full-time position. And bottom line answer is you just can't find part-time employees that are consistent. We did put ads out. You don't really get very many responses, and then what happens is you train a part-time person, then they go and they take a full-time job somewhere else, and you start over the cycle. So we decided to move to a full-time position, which I think has been working out well, but it comes at a cost of increasing that budget line.
Right, so I just wanted to point that out.
Hmm.
to the public.
I just wanted to add that position also provides assistance to the borough clerk. So instead of having 2 full-time employees, the work is being performed by 1.
Okay. Anyone else for anything in finance that they either have a question for or they would like to make a suggestion of reduction?
I have another question on that same page, if I may. If I can get some clarity on why the overtime, what is the overtime there, and why is it being reduced to 1,000 from 3,000? If anybody could explain that to me.
The
Well-
overtime, go
I'm
ahead, sorry.
Well, from what I know, the overtime, if our deputy treasurer stays extra during tax collection, because she is now a deputy treasurer under the Fair Labor Standards Act, she cannot take overtime, so she takes compensatory time. So, and the other 2 staff members who would stay for overtime, their salary is significantly less, so the overtime rate, the overtime amount to be budgeted is less.
Are
So
we doing-
1,000 should be sufficient. That's what we're saying because of
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Claudiana?
Sorry. Line item 130-168.
Okay,
Computer
so
maintenance.
Group 130, then group 168.
The first one on that page.
Good. Computer maintenance you're talking about, Claudiana?
Yes, so there
Go
was
ahead.
no expenses last year. Is that included on the IT services that were budgeted for the borough clerk, or that's separate?
No, so this would be basically equipment for the finance office that's related to computers. So computers, printers, scanners, things like that. It's a lumpy by nature, right? Because you might get a computer, it might last 3 years, it might last 5 years. And this is to replace some same reason as what we talked about with some of the other line items. We know we're going to need it. We don't know when. And that would be the same would apply for some of our office supplies, even with postage, where you replenish the meter and you use it and you use it as you need it. We order check stock, we order purchase order supplies in bulk. And then, so we might have a big expense this year and it might last us all the way through 25. And then in 26, so 25, we'd have no expense. And then in 26, we have another large expense. So this is one of those scenarios where we've left it flat because we assume that we're going to need it at some point. We're just not sure when the computers are going to conk out on us.
Thank you.
I see no other hands. Is there, Michelle, is there anywhere else?
I
we
just
need to
have
go?
one quick question on 40120130028. Professional
Okay, so group
services
130 and what was this last part?
028.
028. Michelle, if you could leave off the first 3
Sure,
groups.
yeah, I
and just
will.
do the
Okay,
last
sorry
one.
about that.
130 and give it to me again, the last 3.
028.
028. Okay, everybody.
And it's professional services and costs, and it's right in the middle of the screen right now. And I saw requested was 14,750 and budgeted is 7,000, and I was just wondering why we dropped that from the request. Just curious.
Well, it's been a larger number. If you go backwards, one of the things that we use that for is financial advisors. We used to use it maybe for fixed asset inventory, professional, as well as official statements, things like that are again lumpy expenses. I've been doing a lot of the analysis for future debt service that we would maybe use a financial advisor for. I will not act as a financial advisor. I'm not allowed to do that. So when we do permanently finance anything, we will have a financial advisor. But once we get to the point where we're permanently financing things, we can actually charge those expenses to those capital ordinances that we're permanently financing.
Oh.
So what I've got this in here for is anytime if we need I think the last time we used them was 2022. We called our financial advisor and we had them do some analysis for us to help give us some guidance. That was charged to that account. If we have bond counsel handle something that's not directly related to or one of our ordinances, we would charge it to that account. Same thing. We do have a separate line for the auditor for the audit. But if I have him do something with like a supplemental debt statement or official statement, which again, we haven't needed since 2020 when we sold debt, we would charge it to that line as well. So it's, again, just one of those situations where, it's been 14,750 for a long time. I dropped it down because I think that we're getting to the point where the expenses that we're going to have are going to be more related to the capital projects than they're going to be to operating. So I think that we're safe with that reduction.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Claudiana.
Sorry, one more thing. 145012.
Group 145, group 012.
It has a 0 requested and then budgeted for 25,500. Is that an error or no?
No, all of the salary and wage lines will have a 0 requested. I populate them based on, particularly with the part-time, I populate it based on trends, and full-time is based on our salary ordinances. So there's really no requested line items unless there's something special that would be outside of something we adopted already, or that salary adjustment account that we talked about earlier.
Thank you.
I want to stop for a second. I believe no, keep going. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay.
Or anyone else?
So, if we could just have a brief discussion on the salary adjustment account, 425-100.
Okay, this would be a little bit further, group 425.
And it's one of the last pages in this section.
Mhm.
And I see the note that it includes 52,500 for stormwater, but it looks like the number jumped a lot even without that, and I was hoping to get a explanation for everybody.
I can talk about that for a minute. So the cover sheet that we went through originally, the 52.5, that was the number that I referenced for the new obligations for stormwater management. So on the summary page, it's an account that doesn't exist in our current system. So I have it in that salary adjustment account on this sheet, but it will be a separate line item. So if we subtract out that 52.5 that is on that front page summary sheet for stormwater, we're down to 57,000. What happened this year versus previous years is I actually put together all these documents before we adopted our salary ordinances for this year. Because last year we actually waited to adopt the salary ordinances, but I did these documents early. So this salary adjustment account represents the full increase rather than the incremental increase. So in previous years, if John Doe had a salary of $100,000, his salary would be a 2% increase on that. It would be $102,000 in that line item. And the extra $1,000, if we were going to go to a 3%, would be in the salary adjustment account. This document was put together before we knew whether we were going to adopt a salary ordinance for the 2% or not. So it covers the full 3% rather than just the 1% delta. So it looks higher than typical. If you'd like, before the next meeting, I can make revisions and move all of it over into the individual accounts. This account encompasses all of the non-union employees. So there's about a dozen or so accounts that this would be distributed into. Every department that has a non-union employee in it, basically.
Okay, it just seemed like a lot compared to the prior years, the 57,000.
Because it's 3% instead of 1%. That's the difference. In prior years, the 2% was in the respective salary and wage accounts.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, just for the benefit of the public and Chris, clarification, the idea of a 3% is not a requirement. It is a funding option, correct?
Correct.
So we're not saying we're doing 3%. We're just simply saying we're leaving us some leeway when we make the decision, correct?
Correct.
All right, good. Michelle,
Yes, 1 second. DPW, we're not doing tonight.
we're leaving that for Saturday?
Right. And ditto for rec, correct? Lisa?
Correct.
And just for the public's benefit, why are we doing that?
These are Department of Public Works, Recreation, Fire Department, Police Department are our bigger departments in terms of operation as well as mainly capital.
And so we're joining it all together. So the public understands we're not trying to hide anything. We're just trying to be more efficient in our time.
Correct. So for today, we're handling the operating budgets of the much smaller in terms of financing departments.
All right, great. Okay. Michelle, where are we going?
Just a quick question. I do see that Chief Walker is an attendee. Do we want to do the operating budget, or is that not the time to do that right now for the police department?
Lizette and Chris, that's to you.
We can go through anything tonight as far as I'm concerned, as long as
Let me ask the chief.
everybody's
'Cause-
on board.
Well, hold on, Michelle. So
Well-
it was not originally part of the plan with the finance committee and the business administrator, is that correct?
Yes, but
So why don't we leave it to the end then, and to make sure we cover everything that was part of the plan. And then if
Okay.
time allowed, we can introduce new parts so that we're because if the chief wasn't asked to be here for this, he also may or may not be ready. So we're putting him on notice that we may come to him or not. Let's continue with the plan that was designed. And then if there's time left over, we can certainly come back.
okay, he had raised his hand. Should I?
No, let's go with the plan that we
Okay.
have.
Gotcha.
Because there were
Okay.
people who were asked to be here tonight.
Okay.
So Michelle, what would be next in the plan we've already designed?
Um,
Do we go to the Office of Emergency Management, since we're keeping fire and police out?
I hate to interrupt. Can Shade Tree go soon?
That was part of the plan, correct?
Yes.
Michelle?
yes.
So
The-
Lizette, do you have any objection to moving Shade Tree up in the discussion?
No objection.
Does
Oh,
any
thank you.
member of the Budget Committee, both elected and citizen, have any objection to moving Shade Tree up? Hearing no objection, it is so moved. All right, everybody, let's move to Shade Tree, which I think is the very last tab, is it not?
Yes.
All right. So Michelle, what is it that you would recommend? And then Shade Tree can chime in based on your recommendations.
Did we get an answer about the donation line, Lisa? No. Okay. You guys could just give us an explanation of the 40,000. I know, I think you wrote that it was for the extra 121 trees.
All right, so basically, a little history here on our tree planting. A few years ago, mayor and council decided that they would recommend us doing it every other year planting.
Correct?
So we didn't plant last year, so this is our year to plant, and we're requesting the 40,000 to plant 100 trees.
I think what Councilwoman Kaufman's asking, certainly what I'm asking is, in 2 years ago, in 2022, it was 20,000. That ended up being 29,000. So can you guys explain, first of all, what happened in 2022? And that would give us some context for 2024.
Sure. So in 2022, we had a $66,000 grant.
Yeah.
So we felt that, you know, we didn't need the full 40 in 2022. So we asked, you know, we're asking for 40,000. In 2021, we did not receive any funding. In 2020, we received $50,000. 2019, we didn't receive anything. And then in 2018, received $19,720.
Okay, but just for the council's benefit, explain the difference in 2022. You asked for 20,000 and we ended up funding $29,905.92. If you could just explain that for the council's benefit.
In 2022, my record for tree planting, we only received 20,000. And the other additional 66,000 came from a grant, a CSIP grant.
And then we used open space
Oh.
and trust money also, I think.
Right.
Okay, Lizette, and am I reading this wrong? We're currently on 40126, 302,167. And I see appropriated in actual for 2022, 20,000 appropriated, 29,905.92 actual. Lizette or Chris, can you explain what was that difference? Why do we have a difference there?
That's correct. I just pulled up the detail on it. We ordered about $12,000 from Shade Trees Nursery for planting of trees, and another $17,394 from Aspen Landscaping, again for planting of trees. So the total is about 29,000.
And 14,359 was used for the tree planting out of capital in 2022.
Oh, so so that extra additional money, so if we're going to go, if you're going to look at it like that, so the money that comes out of capital used to be how we're earmarking that as open space money. So that specific planting only goes into our parks. So we used to ask, and we used to get funded from open space to plant in our 3 parks, but now we have to request capital to do that. So that if you're incorporating that figure, that's capital separate from street trees.
Okay, so now the 40,000, is that all in, or is also money coming out of capital?
So the 40,000 is for 100 street trees. Since we can't request open space any longer, we're requesting 19,000 from capital. Within the 19,000, I did put in 5,000 for the watering person part-time. I'm not sure this year how that might get allocated, because I did notice that there was another separate line that ends in 302,012. I don't know if that's in this line item, or if we have to do capital for that. So that's what we're, asking the 19,000 out of capital, since we don't have open space money anymore.
No, you can't pay salary and wages out of capital.
Okay, so wherever the 5,000, I didn't know where to request it. Last year, I know DPW, Jason takes care of that account, but we have to fund it. So I don't know where that money, how to request that fund this year. Because I don't have that line item on my budget, the one that goes in the 302,012, the part-timer.
So Jen, just to go back to the mayor's question, if we budgeted you 20,000 in 2022, why was 30,000 spent?
I'm not getting that the the 20,000 back in 2022, the extra funding would have been from capital. I don't have that extra 30 for trees.
No, it was the 29 plus the 14. We actually spent like 42,000 that year.
Yeah, I had scanned these sheets over to you.
I'm just looking at my tree plants.
I'm gonna, yeah.
All right, okay, so let's put the mystery of 2022 to the back burner. Let's work on the budgeted 40,000. Is that an actual 40,000 or not? Because now I'm hearing that some of the things that Jen and Liz were going to put into capital can't go into capital.
Well, the only thing that you're indicating that can't go into capital would be the $5,000 every year comes up. Where are we going to, get the funds from? So the line last year, again, the 302012, I don't know where that falls under because I don't see it on our main budget here. It used to come out of open space because the watering person was doing majority of the parks, but then we put it under Jason so that they could do our trees since we got a grant and we wanted to make sure, all the plantings had a higher survival rate since we need that for the grant.
So just to go over the tree planting in general, when you say 100 street trees, are we talking like trees that would have to be planted annually, or are they permanent? Because the requirement for capital is it's got to be a permanent tree replacement program. So if we're talking 100 trees that are permanent trees that are going to be there for the next 20 years plus, then all of that can be in capital. Any operating expenses, so watering the trees, pruning the trees, doing anything like that, maintenance would have to be in the operating budget.
Correct.
So right now we've got $40,000 request for trees in the operating budget, which it sounds like that might be capital, but we've got a $19,000 request in capital. That part of it might be operating, if I'm understanding that.
No, all right, so let me be clear. In our operating budget, this is our year to plant trees. The $40,000 is to plant 100 street trees. Now, typically—
Are you saying, Jen,
yeah,
that it costs $40,000 to plant the trees, not to buy the trees?
It's to buy the trees and to plant the trees.
Okay, but Chris has just made that clear. Buying the tree goes in capital, planting the tree goes in operating.
We've always, this is something we've—
Doesn't make a difference what we've always done. We want to do it correct going forward. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, we can, if it's part of a tree planting program, both those expenses can go into capital in the year that it's happening. It's just the maintenance of trees, tree removal, stump grinding, stump removal, things like that are all operating. But the actual purchase of tree, again, and there's a difference between decorative trees that, go in a pot and they last for a season, versus ones that are there permanently. As long as they're permanent trees, they can go into the capital budget.
So I don't want to speak for Shade Tree, but Liz and Jen, we don't do any potted trees. We only do permanent trees, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So we need to, maybe we need to, Liz and Jen, you need to perhaps get together with Chris and Lizette this week. And then, because it sounds like we need to make a change to this line and to the capital line, because it sounds like all of this should be in capital and it sounds like we should be zeroing out the 40,000. Would that make sense to you, Chris?
Yeah, so it sounds to me like we've got $59,000 requested. 54 of that should stay in capital, and 5,000 should go to operating to pay to water the plants. That's what I'm gathering.
Jen, Liz?
I mean, as long as we get somebody, allocate the funds.
Let's answer the question asked. Regardless of what we've done in the past, let's do it correct now.
Okay.
Do you need 5,000 in operating for watering, yes or no?
Yes.
Is there any other operational requests that you need to make? Because I'm about to ask Councilwoman Kaufman to make a motion to reduce the 40,000 to 5,000. And then we don't need to make a motion to increase the capital. We can just, Chris can make that correction because we're going to be dealing with that on Saturday. So operationally, you need 5,000 to water, correct?
Correct.
And that's the only thing you need operationally.
Well, I mean, again, are we talking about our other lines like maintenance, stump removal? All the other ones, he's okay, correct?
Well, we have 15,000 in stump removal, so we have 4,000 in maintenance. Is that 4,000 in maintenance for watering or is that for something else?
Maintenance is like if we have like big trees that are around, like we had one behind one house and DPW can't get there. You know, you need a crane.
Okay, so that maintenance is basically a crane. Okay,
Correct.
so we want to leave the maintenance, we want to leave the stump remover. Well, isn't the 5,000 the crane for emergency?
And the 5,000 was for the person to water the trees during the summer.
All right, so we really need to redo this. So for the 170, 302, 170 needs to be the 4,000. The 167 needs to be 5,000. The maintenance needs to go to 0 because if the maintenance is the crane is the emergency, correct?
No,
Yeah.
emergency is emergency. Like if Jason goes and does something without shade tree, we just took a tree down behind the library. It was $5,900 for one tree. So, you know, we use that money. We use both of them. Maintenance also, we have our inventory system, our online inventory system, that's $2,500 a year. So that falls under.
Okay.
So we don't, so the reason why
yeah.
we, just to be clear on the inventory systems through Davies Tree Keeper, we have a 3-year contract and it expires this year. So next year we'll put in for, you know, the software update and the maintenance on it. So you also use that under there, which is like $2,500 a year. We got a discounted rate for 3 years.
Okay.
So that's why it's not in that budget line right now. The
Well-
emergency line has always been for Jason whenever he deems to use it. So like last year, no one used that $5,000. We used the maintenance though, as Liz mentioned, to remove a tree. by
We
the
did,
library.
we used encumbered funds. That's why it's showing up as 0. We had encumbered funds at the end of the year, so we used that. So we did spend money on emergency. But I can tell you the cranes have gotten really expensive. Tree work has gotten expensive to contract out.
Well, we need to fix this. So, so we're gonna, let's do this. Let's reduce the 40,000 to 5,000. We'll leave the rest alone. Lizette, can you and Michelle and Liz and Jen have a conversation, either email or something, get these items correct. And we'll deal with it on Saturday. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, Michelle, could you make a motion to reduce line 4-01-26-302-167 from 40,000 to 5, and with the understanding that the amount would be put into capital, and a motion that the rest of the shade tree budget be corrected so that it is in keeping with what our CFO has described as appropriate for operational.
Okay, so I move that we
You can
change,
just say so moved.
so moved.
Good.
Second.
Second. All right, it is open for debate. Is there debate? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? All right. Liz and Jen, please, try to find some time to talk to Michelle and or Lizette. And let's make sure that the budget is correct according to the expectations of our CFO.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, what's next on the agenda that we had for tonight?
Assessor, I guess,
All right, everybody, let's move to assessor.
if anyone has any questions regarding that tab. I do not.
Okay, let's all take a moment to look at that and see if we have any questions or any recommendations. Alright. We always can go back, but is there any, or am I not giving enough time? I don't want to rush anybody.
We skipped over OEM.
Ah,
We can go back to that in a moment. Is there anything in regards to assessing? All right, let's go now to OEM, which is group 252. And Michelle, anything here?
I do have a question. Part-time, 401.25, 252-012. We used to think it was going to be a higher requirement, and I know we haven't spent the 20,000 we allocated in 2022 and 2023. Just wanted to make sure that that 13,400 was going to be enough.
Bill, do you want to chime in on that?
That is the salary for the deputy OEM, which is I believe a 5,000 plus whatever increase he's gotten over the past few years. So that line has been steady over the past few years.
Okay, Chris or Lizette? No? If you don't have anything, you just can be silent. That's good. Any member, either elected or a citizen in regards to OEM or that question? Michelle, anything else in regard to OEM?
The convention, I guess you're adding that in?
Yeah, that's the first time I put it in. This is to cover convention expenses for the annual convention in Atlantic City, which covers the CEUs that are needed for to continue my employment for the borough.
So that's 252-170. 252-170.
Okay, great. So ongoing education then, yeah.
Okay, and why is it 1,500 and not 1,000 or 2,000? Bill, what's the justification for the 1,500?
I took actually 15 from some of the two other line items and just made that. It's basically the same budget as I had last year. I just
Reallocated?
reallocated, so I paid Peter to fund Paul. That's all.
Any member of council or the Citizen Budget Committee that has a question? All right, if not, then Michelle, where do we go next?
Construction code, is that correct? No, land use.
Is there anything on fire prevention? Because that's what's after OEM.
Okay, let's look at
Yeah,
that.
fire.
That's group 265. Michelle, anything there? Any member of
Not
council?
for me.
Any member of council or Assistant Budget Committee?
I do have a question on the full-time, that's 44,000. Is that the salaries and wages? Because
This
it's
is
0.
265-011.
Correct.
265-011.
Yeah, the 44,000 is salaries and wages, yes. That's your fire official as well as the part-time employees in fire prevention.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Feel free to call out if I don't call on you. This seems like a small thing, but I'm looking at 265-033 publications. It's been $175 since 2019 that has been spent, and yet we keep keeping the amount at 400. I don't know why we're doing that. $265,033. Is there any explanation for that? I recommend that we reduce it to 200. Does anyone object? Could I have a motion and second to reduce line 4-01-25-265-033 from 400 to 200?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. It's open for debate and discussion. Is there debate and discussion?
I guess I would just point out the next line, office supplies, they've been overspending on. So do we need to raise that one?
Yeah, I would rather the budget be more keeping with
Accurate.
what it is. And let's amend that motion to include increasing office supplies by, let's see, I reduced it by essentially 200 to 600. Could I have a motion and second to amend to increase line 4-01-25-265-036 from 400 to 600?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is on the amended motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there debate? Hearing none, could I have, all in favor of the main motion as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, anything else in this budget sheet? So essentially, we made it flat. We just made a correction that I think is a good one because it more reflects, we've already done tax assessor. The next would be land use. Finance Chair, Councilwoman Kaufman.
I do not have anything for that.
Okay, everybody, just to take a look, that's group 180.
I
Is
guess
there
I
any-
would just point out for the public that the reason why the part-time number is higher than the prior year, that accounts for some changes we made recently. Is that correct? For 401-21-180-012?
Lizette, is that correct? Chris, is that correct?
Scrolling to that 181. Sorry, what was that number?
180.
180-012.
Correct. The hourly wage change.
Okay.
So why did we make that hourly wage change? Lizette or Chris?
That was approved last year to take into effect this year based on the amount of work that this part-time employee takes on for a very active board.
Okay, sounds good. Any question about that before we go to Councilwoman Malari? Councilwoman Malari.
Item line 180-021, the legal advertising. I
Okay,
don't see that it's been used $2,000. Can we reduce that?
is there any objection? What would you recommend, Councilwoman, 1,000?
1,000?
Yeah, I mean, that's still, I mean, the most we've ever spent was $525, and last year we spent 216. Is Chris, Lizette, Michelle, what do you think about that idea?
Great idea.
All right, is there anybody who thinks that that's a bad idea? All right, so let's have a motion. Michelle, can you move 4-01 I'm sorry, my bad.
Councilwoman Malalari could do it.
Okay, Councilwoman Mari, would you move 4-01-21-180-021 from 2,000 to 1,000?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is open debate. Is there debate? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, any abstention? Okay,
Mayor,
yes. Councilman?
I'm looking at 180042, the very next page on training.
Yeah.
Which is 1,000, but they haven't spent a dime on it all the years. So maybe just lower that to 500 in case.
Lizette, Chris, Michelle, what is our thinking on why we're keeping that at 1,000, and what is your thinking on reducing it to 500, which seems to make sense to me?
The land use board falls under the municipal land use law, and if the state makes any changes and requires training, there are several members that would have to go to training, so it's just a placeholder to have in the event there are any significant changes to the municipal land use law.
So are you saying that we need to keep it at 1,000, or would 500 be too little?
I think 500 would be too little, considering many Rutgers courses are at about $600-700.
Barry, are you okay with that?
Yeah, of course.
All right, anything else?
I do have another one on the same, right under that in training,
Give
the
us
membership.
the item number, 168?
180-044.
044.
Memberships and dues and memberships and dues. I see that none has been used consistently. We decreased it to 400, but we're requesting now 500.
Yeah, why are we doing that? That's a good question.
Is either 0 because we don't need it, or I mean, what would be a reasonable amount? But it seems like we don't use anything.
So that's 180-168, 180-168.
Oh,
No,
No,
Mayor,
it's
that's
044.
044, the one above.
Oh, 180-044. My bad. I apologize.
it's down at the bottom of the screen. Yeah.
I see it now. Okay, Lizette, Chris, do you know why that went up 100 when we never use it?
Just looking, I'm looking for notes on the request to see if they gave us any detail on it. I just have a dollar amount. I don't have an explanation.
What do you want to reduce it to? What do you think?
Is that a question for me, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. 150, 200, keep it open?
I will defer to the CFO or Mr. Portela to what they think is actually reasonable, unless we need to zero it out, because they haven't used anything, even as far back as 2019 when they had a 600, nothing has been used.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary. I don't know if there are any subscriptions or publications that they would need in the future. But you're right, they haven't used it in the.
Yeah, I was just looking through my emails when we received the original budget request on November 21st. I mentioned to the land use clerk, you're requesting professional services to increase and memberships, dues and subscriptions to increase by 100. And I only received a response on the professional services increase, nothing on the reason why the increase the membership dues line to 044.
Well, then I think maybe we should reduce it to 100, and if we need to revisit it on Saturday, we can, but I don't see any reason to increase it by 100. I would reduce it from 500 to 100, which would be a reduction. Lisa, would you be good with that?
Yeah, I'd like to understand a little better, maybe between now and then, if they, but it seems like there's something we can actually zero out. But 100 would be fine for now, Mr. Mayor.
All right, could I have a motion, Lisa, for 4-01-21-180-044 to be reduced to $100?
Yeah, make a motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. I didn't ask for debate because I didn't hear any prior, so just to be more efficient with time, I'm going to move forward unless I hear discussion for debate. Anything else on this in this group? Okay, construction enforcement, I believe, would be next, correct? Okay, that's group 195 and 200. Councilwoman Kaufman, who is our finance chair, do you have anything you want to raise in this group?
I guess either Ms. Apatella or Chris, could you just give the public an explanation of why the wage costs are going up for this section? I'm just looking at the control total line on the first page.
Sorry, can you say that number one more time?
It's 40122-195-011 and 012.
Well, if you go further down, the professional services line was reduced by 38,000 because we for years had been outsourcing the zoning officer role through professional services, and now it's brought back in-house, so that money was put back under salary and wages.
Yes.
All of it was put in the salary and wages?
Yes.
All 37,500?
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's a little less than that.
Okay. Okay,
It was about 30 or 32 was put into salary and wages.
okay. Councilwoman Kaufman, anything else, Liz and Michelle?
no, that's it for me.
Anybody else? Any citizen member or elected member? Okay. Can we move on?
Okay, so health department.
department? Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Um, 4-01-27-330-180. Hoping again, just for the public to get an explanation of the employee assistance program, what that is.
That's a service provided by Bergen County Department of Health for employees that are in need of counseling when there is like an immediate trauma either experienced at work, or if somebody's having problems at home, coping with death, marital issues, financial issues. It's a service provided to the county, and they charge us not per person not for individuals to attend each and every time. It's annually. They ask for our number of employees and they come up with this rate, which is the service for the year. Should we choose to, we pay for it so that way it's on hand in case we have an employee in crisis that needs assistance.
Okay, so we just started doing that last year then, right?
No, it would, in prior years, it would be lumped together in other line items. This is
Okay.
just putting in its proper designation.
Okay, so this is a long-standing expense.
Oh, yeah, I've been in local government 20 years. It's been going at least that long.
Okay,
All right, I'm gonna go to Councilwoman Malari, Claudiana.
Yeah, I have two items, 330-036.
Zero.
office supplies?
Office supplies you're talking about?
Yeah, they had 600 last year, spent 542, they're requesting 800. Can we reduce that to maybe 650?
Michelle, Lizette, Chris?
sounds good to me.
I mean, they were for about $58 from reaching the 600. I don't know what's generating the increase, but as you see, it's been increasing every year. It's gone from 246, 364. 542. I recommend no less than 700.
And could you also look into what's causing the increase? Claudia, Claudiana, are you good with 700?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so could I have, Claudiana, before I make a motion, what else?
330176. It says Borough share, is that street housing, $3,000? I don't, from 2019, nothing has been sent. Is that like a placeholder? Do we need that 3,000, reduce it?
Which
I
one was
don't-
that?
I don't have the history on that line.
330176.
Yeah, there's been nothing charged there since I've been the CFO here. That's just been there every year. So I don't have any information about it either.
Why don't we reduce it to 500 and ask and send an email to them, telling them we reduced it to 500 unless they can justify where we're keeping it there. That sound good, Lizette? All right, anything else, Claudiana?
No, that's it.
Okay, so I'm gonna need a motion in a second. Let me read it out. Could I have a motion for 4-01-27-330-176 from 3,000 to 500 and 4-01-27-330-036 from 800 to 700?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Because that's two different things, is there any debate or question? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody else?
Yes,
Um,
Mayor.
Go
I
ahead.
I have 330093.
330093, everyone. Medical supplies.
Nothing's been spent. Is that supposed to stay at that amount?
And even during COVID, there was nothing spent. I mean, COVID was really 2020, 2021. It's Chris?
There are a
is
few
that
line
enough?
items in here. There's nothing has been spent. Like training, meetings and seminars, they're all zero.
All right. How about we do this? Lizette and Michelle, can you please make a note that we're going to come back to this? Can you also please send an email to the health department that if there's not a justification for these unused items, that we're going to either put a minimum amount in or zero it out?
Okay.
Is the council comfortable with that without objection? Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so moved. Library is next. Are we
I think we're skipping
no,
that.
skipping that? Okay, municipal court is after that. Finance Chair, Councilwoman Kaufman,
Yes.
anything?
I just had a question. So I see we're assuming that the salaries, full-time and part-time, are gonna be basically flat versus last year. But last year we had allocated 113,100 in total. And that's 401-43490-010, the salaries and wages for the municipal court. And I was just wondering, we had budgeted in an increase for last year and then we came in lower than that. Do we know why that is?
The increase was for the,
Translator?
no, not the translator, on the salary and wages. It was for hiring a deputy court administrator or a court clerk to provide coverage for our court administrator, because under the new judiciary regulations, the municipal court is supposed to be staffed 24/7, holidays, sick days and everything. So we did hire somebody later in the year, plus, but the hours required hasn't been as much as anticipated. So, this amount that is budgeted would cover the judge, the court administrator, and the part-time court clerk.
Is there room to reduce it?
No, I don't believe so.
I
because
don't,
it-
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think there's room to reduce this one.
Are we good with that? Michelle?
Yes.
Is there anything else, Michelle?
Not for me. I mean, this section again has a bunch of items that haven't been used in a long time. So I guess,
I'm looking at professional services costs, I'm looking at uniform costs, and
Mhm.
that's not much, but it's just, I'm looking at other general group, I'm looking at, membership dues and stuff like that. Given our current budget, even though we might be the lowest in Bergen County for the situation we're currently in, I would like to start canceling out or reducing to a minimum amount. A minimum amount to me would be $50. Any line that has not been used in the last 3 to 4 years. But this is the court, so the court does have a special because it's mandated.
Mary, can we,
Go
can
ahead.
can we reduce the court interpreter 490168?
No, it's based, a lot of the court costs fluctuate based on need. And now that court is back in person, one of the 2 sessions per month. If you have a litigant that requires a translator, it has to be a certified professional in that language. So that number varies based on activity on cases. Same thing with professional services. If we have to bring in any substitute personnel, if there could be a conflict where somebody can have a conflict that they serve as an attorney, a representative for a litigant's coworker, family member, or whatnot. So to not have that conflict, we do have to have the ability to find substitute individuals. Meetings and seminars, that is the training that the court administrator is required for her state license. Travel could be reduced because that falls under the meetings and seminars cost. Transcripts on appeal, if there's an appeal, there hasn't been in a few years, but if there's an appeal, you have to provide for it. American Disability Act requirements. If the court does get audited by the county court, the county court, I'm getting the name incorrect, but at the county level, they get audited. So if anything appears in the audit, the court has to remediate any deficiencies, in a very short time period. It can't wait till like the next budget year. So the
Alright.
judiciary is since it's technically separate from the municipality, it's very tricky. Even with the budget, there's not much latitude.
All right, so
That stands for the expert witnesses as well, 490171.
Correct, it depends on the case, especially if with DUI cases.
Got it. Thanks.
So given our BA's explanation of this group, I'm recommending the council moves on to insurance. Is there any objection? So Michelle, I think we're in insurance, correct? Is there anything you have here that you want to?
I just want to point out to the public that our liability insurance is going up 18% this year, as is everyone's. That's a huge increase, which there's nothing we can do about that. And
Yeah,
workers'
so it's more than $40,000, correct?
right, and then workers' comp is up 7%, which is not quite as bad percentage-wise, but insurance costs are going up really significantly. And that is driving our tax rate. And employee group health, which is 40123-220-090, also mandatory. Not as bad an increase as the prior year, but still almost a 9% increase for that. So we've had some very, very significant increases.
And that 9% is about $70,000, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very significant increases in non-negotiable items that every town is facing. And that's what's causing our tax rate to be much higher than it had been historically.
Councilman Malari, Claudiana.
210178. What's that yearly addition for $4,000 that nothing has been sent the last 4 years?
Oh, yearly additions, yeah.
Which one was that?
210-178.
That's if
Oh.
we need to bind any additional coverage as needed, whether we like expand recreation programs, for example, or if the day camp goes from half day to full day, or like before we used to have a citizen emergency response team. We haven't had it, at least since I've been here, but if that gets activated again, that's additional coverage that would need to be bound for these types of volunteers. So this is just a placeholder in case throughout the year, if there's any new programs, new activities, new volunteer groups that come in that need to be covered, then this line would address it.
So will we be able to reduce it? Maybe $3,000? It has to stay 4?
It can be reduced to 2,500. I don't recommend any less.
Okay, let's hold that and we'll do all of them together. Is there any objection to 2,500 when we have the motion? Seeing none. Claudiana, anything else?
I have something else for the 210-300. The library, they requested 1,300. We budgeted 1,600.
And it's liability insurance, yeah.
It's they're seeing the same increase that it's the same 18% increase that we have in the liability insurance. So that 13,000 is just an allocation. So they're realizing that same increase that the town is realizing. Historically, it's been 13,000. It's never been adjusted for any of the increases that the town has had. So now these increases are more material, so they're sharing in that increase as well.
Claudiana, anything else? I personally would like, I don't see any hands, that's why I'm speaking. We have flood insurance, 210-168, 210-168. Every year we budget 25,000. Last couple of years it was 5,000, 8,000, 9,000. Lizette, Chris, is there any reason we're keeping it up that high?
Well, in 2020, we were charged 24,996. I don't know if that had to deal with tropical storm Isaias. That may have been a factor because that's the only thing that stands out from 2020. But it does fluctuate. It decreased to 5,000, then it went up 84, and then 95. And flood insurance, it's based on the bill that we receive from our flood insurance provider, and that's based on not a New Jersey market, but a nationwide market.
So we probably can't reduce that. It'd be nice to reduce it by 5, but if we can't, we can't.
I don't recommend reducing it, especially with a bad summer forecasted by NOAA for the United States as a whole.
Anybody else?
I had a question further on.
Hold on. Okay, we're still gonna go back for the early edition. But yeah, go ahead.
It's for 225-100 unemployment insurance. Just wondering why the 2023 number, is that a typo for 2023?
No, that's not a typo. All the unemployment claims that you had since COVID were on hold with the state, and they just started billing them out. They did have some forgiveness built into them, and rather than trying to budget for these claims retroactively, I did transfer at the last meeting to fund, or the last transfer resolution, not at the last meeting, to fund last year's account so that I can put it into the unemployment reserve and pay those without having to increase the budget to do that. So it's not a typo. It is payments that we do have to make to the state for unemployment claims that were made for our employees, but they're not current unemployment claims. They go back, I believe, to 2021. And my expectation is that we'll receive more claims from 22 and 23, but I do have the breakdown of those claims, so that's built into that $70,000 number. The amount of the invoices that we received to date is about 35,000, so I'm expecting about double that over the next couple of months, and we're reserving that so that we can pay it when those invoices come in.
Can you just explain to everyone, including me, what that was for?
It's any unemployment claim that's made by any employee that's no longer active. They send government employees, non-governmental employees usually make a contribution out of their paycheck. It goes right to the state, and it's state insurance that's funded directly through the state. Governmental entities are on what's called a reimbursement basis. So the contributions come out of an employee's check, but the town holds on to those contributions, and as well as the employer share, until we actually have to pay out actual claims. So it's reimbursed. While we're not sending anything to the state year over year, we do get billed anytime a claim is made. The most common claims that are made would be crossing guards every summer. School is out. There's no work for them, so they collect unemployment, right? So that's an example of one. But yeah, it's every claim that's been made since 21 was on hold.
Okay, so was most of that crossing guards then?
We had a couple of employees that left also,
Okay.
not necessarily related to COVID, for various reasons they
Okay.
left, but
Okay. So
but yeah.
the 8,500 for this year you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with it. We're going to continue to fund that reserve, and if we find that it's not enough, we'll probably end up doing transfers towards the end of the year again to fund it, to continue to fund that reserve. But as of now, I'm comfortable with that number.
I have a question about you're on it right at this page, 221-100. Can you just explain what that is, Chris?
Sure. So, and this isn't for new hires, but our borough policy, and this is something that came out with the state. The state had this program where they said, let's try to reduce our employee healthcare costs across the board, and let's offer an incentive for employees to do that. So the state allowed payments of 25% of the savings, up to $5,000, whichever is less, to employees that opt to waive their benefits. The exception for that is if the employee's spouse also has an SHBP or SEHBP coverage, they wouldn't be eligible. So any employee that we have from prior to, when did we change it? I think we changed it in 2021.
2021.
Yeah, so any employee hired prior to 2021 that waived their benefit would be eligible for this $5,000 health waiver. So we have budgeted for 5 employees, and that could change at any time.
Thank you.
Are we good? Anybody else?
I have one more question.
Sure,
Sorry.
go ahead.
478-100.
478-100.
Towards the
What is
back.
that defined contribution retirement program?
That is a retirement program. Again, this is the state came out with this for employees that are not eligible for the pension system. So the requirement is there's a couple of requirements, but the primary requirement is that they earn $5,000 or more. And this is more like a 401k than it is a pension. It's just a deferred compensation program where the employee and the employer would both contribute to an account, and the employee would then have access to that upon retirement. So that's something that is based on wages and eligibility. It changes year over year, but it's something that you know, we have to continue to fund every year, and we don't know what those numbers are going to be. Sometimes we have part-time employees that are over the threshold, but they're not eligible. Maybe they're retired, maybe they're in a position that doesn't make them eligible. And we can very easily replace that same employee the following year and with somebody that is eligible that makes the same salary, and then you're on the hook for it. So I don't usually change that too much. If anything, I increase it because wages increase and it's a percentage of wages.
Anything else? Okay, I believe Claudiana, this was your recommendation, yearly additions, correct?
Yes.
Could I have a motion to alter yearly additions 4-01-23-210-178 from 4,000 to 2,500?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 I believe we're up to utilities, correct? Oh, any abstentions, any no's? No, okay. Michelle?
Yes, utilities. So I guess we could start at the beginning, the first page in the handout, and it's 303-100. And I just wanted to make sure we think that that number is a good, high enough number. I know Jason's not here right now to comment on that. I've seen a few different articles about this lately with very, very different outcomes. Ms. Apatella, do you have any comments?
Well, we're going out to bid. Actually, I've been working, Jason and I have been working with our counterparts in New Milford, and we have the specs ready to go. They're going out to bid. They're advertising actually on Friday. And for garbage contracts, you have to have your bid notice out for 60 days. So the bid opening at New Milford will be on May 29th. And even if it comes higher than anticipated, the contract does not go into effect until mid-October. So worst case scenario, if the amount comes in higher, will be in the time for right around the time for transfers. But in reviewing this with Mr. Melito, in anticipation to prepare the budget, we were comfortable with this figure, with this number.
All right. Anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
440-170.
440-170, you said?
Yes, and that's
Telephone service?
service. Exactly. I guess I was just wondering why the big increase for that one.
Well, it looks like we budgeted 50,500. We paid 63,792. So we went over on that. Is that correct?
And the year before 2022 was 72.
Yeah.
That was paid out.
So Chris and Lizette, is that the justification for the 72,000?
Yeah,
Listen, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think it's a trend situation. It fluctuates a lot. You know, went from 57 to 72 to 63. Honestly, it's probably a situation where we have to review all of our telephone lines and see what you know, why we're changing as much as we're changing, and see if we can do some kind of consolidation. But this was based on just a trend line.
What about the line above that, $6,000?
And the AT&T wireless too. That's, oh, we're already doing 0 for that one for this year. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I looked at that, you take the set to 21.5, the 6,000 and the 50,500 from last year, and I just reallocated it to the 72 and the 6. So both of those, when you combine those three, it equals $78,000 on both sides. So I left those the same. Let me highlight on the screen these accounts. I left these three accounts that are funded the same year over year. I just moved them around a little bit to where it made sense more because it didn't, you know, we stopped using that AT&T wireless account. But again, it's, you know, we've gone over the last 2 years on telephone, and you know, we don't need transfers because it's all within the same account. So it made sense for me to move it. But again, it's a lumpy cost. You know, I don't know that we're going to know exactly what our telephone costs are until everybody's you know, the building's done, everything's relined, and you know, you have a new telephone system.
But can we reduce that 6,000? We haven't used even like $1,000. Why keep it at 6,000? 168.
One,
We can reduce.
168, Chris.
Yep, I'm looking to see if there's a specific thing that's charged there. That tells me something other than just Verizon. And no, it just tells me Verizon. So,
And in fact, I don't think, is there a separate cost for long distance anymore, anywhere?
No.
I was surprised. Why 2 different items? It says phone, Verizon, phone service.
well, I'll be honest with you. This is a situation where that's the name of the account that was there probably for the last 30 years. And it's you know, there are a lot of accounts that we've been trying to consolidate year over year, you know, that were separated out. You know, you'll notice this year, once we get to DPW, there were probably 40 accounts that we turned into 4. And so we've been slowly chipping away at it, but
So can we eliminate the 168 to be consolidated with 170?
yeah, we probably should. And now, and if you look at account 167, so what I've been waiting for to be able to consolidate accounts is that we have 5 years of no activity. Because if you have activity and I get rid of an account, you're not going to see it anymore. So 167 would be an example where I can actually now get rid of that account because it's not going to show up on your reports, and you're not going to be missing anything because it's just all zeros. So we can make it 0, but you'll see it for the next 5 years on this report as until you have 5 years of zeros.
Okay, let's do that. Do we need to move all 6,000 or can we move less to save money?
I don't think anything has been charged there this year. I'm just double checking.
Maybe it's best to hold off until we have our DPW superintendent, because some of the majority of the utilities are paid by his department, so he has a little more historical information.
All right, Lizette, can you and Michelle and Chris take note of 168? And Claudiana, I think what you're suggesting, I hope I understand what you're suggesting, is that we move 1,000 of it to 170 and we clean the other out.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
The police department also handles the phone lines.
And they're also going to be reporting on Saturday.
Saturday.
That's good, because we'll have both the chief and the superintendent with us, so that we can have a productive conversation. We're not crossing lines. But if you're going to take a note on that, that'd be great. Anything else, anyone for this?
I just have a question or more point of clarification on 440176 is the department Wi-Fi. It's 000, but then I have control total and the budgeted has been over 83,000 when they requested 5,900. I'm not following that line.
I think it includes all the phone.
Yeah, that's the total of all the telephone lines. The requests are only the ones that have a department labeled there. So the 5,900 is, the fire, DPW, library, the request amounts for the telephone line. The 78,000 that we were just talking is not included as a request.
So fire department Wi-Fi is actually broader than that. It's not only fire department Wi-Fi. That's what you're saying?
It's a sub account of all of the telephone lines. So, and that's an example of one of the ones that we can probably get rid of now because we've got 5 years of zeros.
Hey, okay.
Lisa, anything else?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, if there is no objection, and we certainly can go back, we're gonna go to contingency. Michelle,
Looking through the pages, 1 second.
sure.
Okay, just the landfill number, we know that's a definite number already. Is that right? 465-124?
I mean, that's a number that fluctuates, but yeah, that's where we're thinking it's going to land. That's for the tipping fees on garbage pickup.
Yeah, the county either has or will be going out to bid very soon, and the contract doesn't run on a calendar year or fiscal year. It starts around May. And the last time they went out to bid, the price increased over $20 per ton. So we're hoping it doesn't go up much higher and have enough of a cushion. But the trend, like with anything involving solid waste collection or tipping, is just increasing astronomically. And this is something that we have to provide, and we have no control over the market.
Okay, so the 450 is $20 a ton again? Is that, or the 15% increase that you're assuming?
No, I'm just saying last time they went out to bid, it increased $20 a ton. We just put that number as a placeholder. I don't know how, we don't get notification until sometime either May or June of what the new rates are.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question on one of the accounts. 870100 emergency authorizations.
Okay, we're in now the contingency, 870100, okay.
It was in 2022 is 14 and now 0. Is that? I just want to ask what that is.
Yeah, so that's only if we adopt an emergency authorization. An emergency authorization is something that comes up after the budget's already adopted and we need to move forward with it. What happens is you raise it in the following year. So for example, where in September, October this year, something comes up and we need to do an emergency authorization, we would do so. And then we would have to fund that emergency authorization in the 2025 budget. So it's not an every year situation. It's just on as needed.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Wait a moment more. Michelle, is it okay to go to debt services?
Yes. Do you guys want to cover that tonight? We can.
Is that part of the plan that we had set up for today? I believe we're concluding at 9 o'clock, so we have about 17 minutes left. So was that a part of the original plan that you
We were
had?
going to discuss debt, and Chris, you have that spreadsheet, right?
Chris, are you ready with that, or do we leave it to Saturday?
We can talk about it. I did talk about most of the things in this budget already. We can talk about the debt. It was a high level introduction in the beginning of this conversation. But I can talk about anything that we're okay to talk about.
All right, if any member of council or citizen budget committee would like to ask a question about groups 901, 950, 920, 925, 930, 935, 944, 945, or 891, which all is umbrellaed as debt services. Take a moment, go through it, see if you have a question. For the public's benefit, and Chris, correct me, debt services is essentially what we owe.
On capital projects, yes.
Yeah. And we can think of it for the public as if these are loans we pay.
Exactly. Or in some cases, we're actually funding things ahead of borrowing the money.
Yeah.
If I may, Mayor, just ask a question.
Sure, go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, so Chris, I had a question about the capital improvement fund. It's really more for me just to see if I conceptually get this. So last year it was 150, and we have to put up 5% of whatever it is that we're going to go out for. So that 468, in theory, we're anticipating going out for a lot more debt. So we're raising the capital improvement fund. Do I have that right?
The way that it appears, that would be right, but that's not what we're doing here. We're leaving that same 150 in there. The difference of the 318, 350. So there's three lines that represent the debt service here. You've got the bond principal, which is going from 1,290,000 down to 990, and you've got interest on bonds, which is going from 148,850 down to 130,500. So the difference between those two, that was the debt that matured that I was talking about earlier on in our meeting. The difference is 318,350. So I added that 318,350 to the capital improvement fund so that our budget doesn't drop by the $318,000 in this year, because we're going to have to pay debt in the future, and I don't want to have a $300,000 increase, so $300 or more $1,000 increase in future years. So that's leaving it flat. We do not necessarily need to, and we should not be using that as a 5% down payment.
So if just for the public's benefit, basically what we're doing is using an accounting technique to make sure that our budget doesn't become volatile.
Yes, and it'll probably end up in a reserve for payment of debt service on the final budget document. It's not something that we've had, so you don't see it on any of your sheets because it's not an account that exists. But it would be reserved for future debt service, and we're using that to just to keep our budget flat.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes left. Michelle, you are the finance chair. I believe you said that the chief or his designate had his hand up.
I think he said he's not ready, and I think he dropped off. But Chris, did you want to pop up that spreadsheet that we talked about, the debt one?
Sure.
Second. Okay. So this is just to kind of show everyone what Chris was explaining previously. And this is a spreadsheet that goes out through 2036. And obviously, we don't know how much debt is going to be authorized in the very far future. But we just took the numbers that were in the capital budgets from everyone and use them for the years 2024 through 2028.
I just want to interrupt for a moment. I want the public to understand that just because those were the requests, that doesn't necessarily mean those will be the approved. But
Right.
you're again using accounting procedure to forecast.
This is our best guess at this moment in time in terms of what will happen to the debt going forward. So you see, there are notes that are going to start to get added this year, and the payments for interest would start next year, and the note principal payments would start this year. And Chris, maybe you're better at explaining this than I am.
Yeah, so I'll go through. Actually, I'm going to start on the second page, and then I'll come back to this one. So the second page is just a list of all the debt authorizations that we've had since we sold bonds in 2020, right? So 2020 is when we were talking about was the last time we sold bonds. Since then, we've authorized a little over $17 million of capital projects, of debt on capital projects. And some of this is going to be funded by grants, but that's the total amount that's authorized right now. Now, eventually we need to pay that back, right? We've paid the vendors for the projects, and we don't have $17 million of cash on hand. So as we've been paying the vendors down, I talked about how I was using some of that money from fund balance, but we're at the point now where we're going to be borrowing money. So coming back over to page 1 here, this first column shows you our existing debt, right? And you can see between 23 and 24 over here, we have that $300,000 drop, right? So that's what you saw in the budget. We're not going to see another drop like that until 2030. So between now and 2030, we're looking to probably stay in short-term notes. What short-term notes are is you're paying for, it's mostly just interest on the project. You're not paying any principal down. Think of it as a temporary financing solution before you go out for a mortgage, maybe like a construction loan type of deal. So what we're doing here is, because we've got this big drop between 23 and 24, you can see I'm filling in the capital improvement fund so that when we come all the way over to the end here, our grand total is keeping our budget flat in our debt service. Now, if you look over the course of the next 10 years, you're going to see increases of between $150,000 to $200,000, again, depending on interest rates, in your debt service to be able to pay principal and interest back. So this is operating under the assumption now that we need to borrow, I think I have $9 million this year, and our first interest payment you see is $359,000, which would come a year from when we borrow it, so that would be next year, and it carries on based on what the requests are, right? So the requests for 2024 through 2028 would be about $14 million in additional debt authorized. That's all included in here. And then I have placeholders for at $2 million a year moving on from that, which again, my crystal ball is not any better than anybody else's. So we'll see where we land 10 years from now. But what this is doing is this is slowly introducing additional principal payments and additional interest payments until we get to the point where we sell bonds in 2030, or we'll actually sell them in 2029, and the first payment would be in 2030. And at that point, we'll start to use some of the fund balance and that capital improvement fund that we're storing now to help bring the payments down. And then we'll hit a peak in 2034 of $3.3 million in debt service annually. And then it'll continue to come down from there, again, depending on what your future projects look like. If anything more than $2 million a year, those numbers will go up. Anything more than 4% in interest, those numbers will go up. Anything less, those numbers will go down. And obviously this is something that, we did this projection for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 years. And there's no reason for us to believe that it's not going to continue to change moving forward. But we're using it as a guideline to do 3 things, really. One is we have a debt policy that we have to stay compliant with, right? So we're monitoring that. And that debt policy actually has 2 components. One is our total net debt, and the other is our debt as a percentage of our total budget. So we're
Can I
monitoring.
interrupt here for a second?
Yes.
This again is a more conservative debt policy that this council has placed upon itself to assure our overall stability, correct?
Yes, and to the tune of a 3.5% state mandate versus a 1.5% local mandate, right? So we're substantially lower than what the state requirement is from a net debt ratio. And then we have a maximum of 11% allowed in our budget of our total appropriations. So and there's no requirement in this from the state end on that. So just having that is very conservative as well. So, and then the third thing, of course, is to try to get a handle on what our budget's going to look like moving forward, right? So, the list that I just showed you there doesn't contemplate that $17 million doesn't contemplate any of the future stuff. That's just what's authorized today, right? And we've got another $14 million of requests for the next 5 years. So by the time we go to sell bonds, between paying off debt and grants that we receive, we're probably looking at a bond sale of about $26 million in 2029. And we'll see what the interest rates look like. And if we have opportunities before that, or if we have to wait a little bit, depending on what that environment looks like, we'll certainly do that. But, that's when you're going to start seeing some larger impact in your budget for these projects. And so you can kind of appreciate the delay that happens between authorizing the project, actually moving forward with it, paying the vendors, and then having to ultimately pay the debt on it.
Excellent, well said.
And I should just mention all these numbers are in compliance still with the debt policy, right?
Yes.
Okay, any member of council or any member of the Citizen Budget Committee who'd like to ask a question or make a comment in regards to this presentation or anything else we've done tonight? Okay, we got about 6 minutes left. Michelle, is there anything more we need to do?
Not that I know of.
Okay, is there any old or new, no, I'm sorry. Chris, is there anything more we need to do?
We covered it.
Lizette, is there anything more you think we need to do?
No.
Council President, is there anything more we need to do?
Not tonight, Mr. Mayor.
All right then. Is there any member of council who would like to bring up any old or new business at this point? Is there any member of council who would like to make a comment?
Just a huge thanks to Chris, Lizette, and Michelle for everything they've done over the past few months.
Well
Great
said.
effort. Thank you.
You're here. You're here.
And all of our department heads too, and everybody,
Yes.
all the employees.
Now, Chris, Lizette, Michelle, correct me if I am incorrect, if I make a mistake. But our next budget meeting is Saturday morning. I believe it's 9 a.m. Is it 9 a.m.?
Yes.
And we will then take up the operation budget of the groups that we had skipped, which includes the police department, the fire department, DPW, and I don't know if there was anybody else.
Recreation,
Library. And rec.
In the library.
they're
the library.
operating in capital.
And then we will be doing the capital for the entire budget, which includes all those departments. And then with luck, that meeting will run from 9 to 1, but with luck, we will finish before the 1 o'clock close. If not, then we might have to schedule another meeting. But if we are able to come to a consensus, then we would need to, I believe, move a budget. Lizette, is the correct terminology?
What would be done is all the approvals that the governing body had authorized, Chris would give it to our auditor to prepare the budget documents for introduction on April 8th.
April 8th, that's it. Introduction of the budget. And then Lizette, from there, what would be the next step?
The governing body has to wait 28 days before they can hold the hearing to adopt the budget. Chris, I don't remember, are we self-examined this year or do we have to wait for the state?
Let me take a look at that. You will, no matter what, 28 days after introduction, you will have your public hearing. It's just a matter of whether you'll be allowed to adopt on that same night. I'm just pulling up the sheet that tells us whether we have to wait for state approval or not. If we don't have to wait, there will be a resolution authorizing us to move forward with self-review, which we're allowed to do one out of every 3 years. There's a cycle that the state runs through. Let me just check where we are in that cycle. Just give me one moment. We are not eligible, so we are state review.
So
Okay, so let's talk about those dates.
The dates won't change. There's just a possibility that the state will have questions. 99% of the time, actually, there's never been a time that I've been involved in a budget that we weren't able to resolve the questions before adoption. It would have to be something major for them to hold up our adoption. So it is an extra step, but it should not impact the timeline at all.
Okay. So that means, Lizette, that we would have the hearing and the adoption on what date again?
our next meeting after the 28th day allotment, I believe, is May 13th.
Okay, for the public's benefit. And once we finish that, then any expenditures could then move forward, capital as well as
We're
Great.
currently operating on a temporary budget, so we've been able to pay our bills until the final budget is adopted. But with capital, we have to adopt a bond ordinance and wait for the 20-day estoppel period. And once that estoppel period has ended, then we could move forward with purchasing and preparing bid specs and going out to bid for anything over $44,000 unless it's under state contract.
Okay, and that would be what the dates for the council and the public's benefit?
Usually following our traditional timeline, we are able to expend against capital like right after Memorial Day.
Okay. All right, any more questions or comments from the council? I'd like to thank everyone for doing a phenomenal job. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Michelle, especially, and Chris and Lizette, as well as the other members of the Finance Committee, the Citizen Budget Committee, which we'll see again on Saturday, the department heads, everyone. Really well done. Am I leaving anyone out?
The whole council. Thank
Oh, I
you,
thought it-
the council.
And the whole council for doing a great job tonight, looking at the details and
Yes.
seeing wherever we can do better job for the people of River Edge. All right, could I have a motion and a second to close, to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right, well done, everybody. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
All right.
Good
Good
night,
night.
everyone.